Mary, I've got 201, so whenever you're ready, we've slowed down a little bit on the admittances, so I think whenever you're ready, we might be set to go.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us here this afternoon for this session. Just a couple of things. You saw that this session is being recorded, and we will post probably both sessions on our website. So if you have forget something or want a refresher, you have access to these recordings. Please put your name and your agency name in the chat box so we can keep track of who attended these sessions. And also please make sure to mute. And with that, I will share my screen, hopefully. This one right here. Okay, can everybody see the nebraskatransit.com website?
Looks good. I've got it. I've got it.
Okay, well, I want to start out by telling you where you can find some resources for the operating assistance application, and it's a little bit different this year than the previous grant cycle. So instead of being in Transit Manager's resources, it's here under funding and applications. You can click here. And then you'll see 5311 Rural Public Transportation Application, current subrecipients. So you're all current subrecipients. So you want to click this down arrow and you will see some resources for you. For example, a copy, a sample of a public notice, a sample of a public hearing notice, a resolution from your governing body approving the application and the local match. The labor narrative, the Exhibit A document. For those of you who have completed an application in the past, you're familiar with this document. It will be updated for fiscal year 22-23, and then we'll replace this document. The certification of equivalent service narrative, which you will need for the application if you have a non-ADA accessible vehicle, and we'll talk more about that. And we have a checklist for you for the operating assistance application. So to get started, you would sign in to the dashboard, however you do that, whether it's through nebraskatransit.com or you just have it saved in your computer. So you just log in and there's your dashboard. Okay, so to create a draft operating assistance application, you would click on New Applications, Operating Assistance. Wait, I forgot to delete the other. I forgot to delete this from the morning session, so we want to start over. We want you to see the correct fiscal year. So new applications, operating assistance application. And it will ask you, are you really sure that you want to create an operating assistance application for fiscal year 2023 through 2025? And the answer is yes, that's exactly what you want to create. So you would click OK. And this is what worksheet 1 of the application looks like. So we want your information. We want the sponsor name and the project name. Now that may be different. For example, you might be, I'll just use the example from this morning. Stratton Industrial Commission might be the sponsor, but the project name would be Hitch and Hay. Or the project sponsor might be Phelps County, and the name of the project is Phelps County Public Transit. Okay, so the DUNS number has been replaced with a unique entity identifier, a UEI. So you need to get with your, if you don't know what your UEI is, or if it's active, or if you even have one, you need to get with the fiscal person in your agency or your county or your city, because they are probably the keeper of the UEI. And if you don't have a UEI, you're going to want to apply for one as soon as possible, because it can take weeks, if not months, to create or to update your UEI. So that's the first thing you want to do in this application process. Don't delay. Make sure you have that UEI. Then we want to know if you are a private non-for-profit organization or a public entity, and we want your complete address. The applicant representative name, who is filling out this application. If we have questions, your title, your phone number, and your email. Now, it will also ask you, is there a subcontractor who will provide and or manage the transit operations? Most of you, if not all of you, will answer no to this. But if you answer yes, we want additional information from you. We want to know who the subcontractor is, if they're private, nonprofit, or not-for-profit, their UEI, and their EIN. So after you get all of this information completed, you would just click Save Worksheet. And it will tell you here whether or not your worksheet saves or not. You no longer have to race to the top of the page to see if you see the green bar that says it was saved, or the red bar that says that it wasn't saved. You'll be able to tell right here by the Save Worksheet button if your worksheet has been saved or if you've left something blank and need additional information. Any questions about worksheet 1?
I'm just going to take a minute, Kari, real quick to remind people, you can put your questions into the chat if you want to. I will be looking at that and asking Kari as we get to the end of each worksheet.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, worksheet 2. This is your service area demographics, but first we want you to think about whether or not you need to update the transit directory. Has your service area changed? Has your address changed? This is your opportunity to make those changes in the transit directory, and you can click here, or you can come over here and click here to look at your information that is in the current directory. And then if it does need to be updated, you would go to Transit Info, find your agency, and then update and submit that information, and it will automatically update the transit directory. So we want to know the demographics of your service area. So we provide you with a link to the US Census, so you can find your service area, if it's a county or a city, and you would plug in the percentage of these demographic categories. And when you're finished doing that, the total here should be 100%. Okay. Now we also ask on this page, do you use your federally funded vehicle to provide incidental use? It is allowable to use your vehicle for incidental use, but you have to meet certain criteria in order for it to be allowable. So this was an addition to the application based on feedback that we got from our federal reviewers earlier this year. So if you don't provide incidental service, you just click no. But if you do, then we want you to answer some additional questions. We want to make sure that that service does not conflict with the provision of regular public transportation services. And we also want to know that the cost for providing that service, like meal delivery or grocery delivery, can be attributable to a different agency or a different program. And then we want you to certify by typing in your name and your title here. Once you have all of this information completed, you would click Save Worksheet. Any questions about this worksheet? Okay. So worksheet 3 has your fleet information. So all of your vehicles will auto-populate just like it does on the invoice. All of your vehicles will auto-populate. And what we want you to do here is rate the condition of this vehicle as it is when you're completing this application. And I've had questions in the past about how do you know how to rate the vehicle, whether it's excellent or very good or fair. So what we use in our statewide transit asset management plan is based on what is provided in the Kelly Blue Book. So I'm going to add that information to the resources at nebraskatransit.com. So you'll have some kind of guidelines that will help you rate the condition of the vehicle. So if you have a vehicle that is not ADA accessible, you will see that there is a 0 here in the wheelchair position. That means that it doesn't have a wheelchair or a ramp. So the database is going to recognize that you have a non-ADA accessible vehicle. And when you click Save Worksheet, your certification of equivalent service pops up. This is a federal requirement. If you have a non-ADA accessible vehicle, we want to know that you have adequate ADA accessible vehicles to meet the needs of the population, of the disabled population in your service area. So this provides you with you would put the name of your agency here, and this provides you with some information about equivalent service, and then the name of the authorized official. This could be the transit manager. It might be your board chair or whoever leads your governing body, the title and the date. Then you're going to come down here and you're going to provide us a brief narrative of the population that you serve. What percentage approximately might need a wheelchair accessible vehicle. And that's why we provide you with some template narrative language at nebraskatransit.com, so you have some idea of what we want to see here in this narrative. And then there's more information here about the non-discrimination federal regulations. So you complete that information and then you hit submit. If you don't submit that certification of equivalent service and you try and save the worksheet again, pops up again. So you cannot save the worksheet and you cannot move on to the next worksheet until you have completed this form and submitted it. Any questions about worksheet 3? Moving on to worksheet 4. This is for your operating budget. So your operating expenses are drivers, dispatchers. Other operating personnel might be, for example, if you had a maintenance person on staff. I don't know of anybody in a rural agency that has such a person, but it's possible. Fuel and oil. So we want the salaries. And remember, this is for a 2-year period. We want you to figure out what it's going to cost approximately for your drivers for 2 years, not 1. And employer costs are if your agency provides, for example, health insurance, dental insurance, workman's comp, FICA, all of that would go under employer costs. After you completed all of this information, you would click Save Worksheet. Any questions on worksheet 4? Okay, all of your other expenses are non-operating. So here we have your non-operating budget worksheet. So this is where you would plug in the salaries for your administrative personnel, your project manager, other administrative staff. Maybe you have somebody that you pay 10 hours a week to do your accounting. Their salaries would go here again for 2 years. Insurance, building rent, vehicle maintenance, office supplies. We have quite a list of items here for you that are already pre-populated, but we also have a line for other non-operating expenses if we've missed something. The indirect cost rate is not going to apply to most of you. Just a few agencies have and claim an indirect cost rate. But if you do claim an indirect cost rate, we want that here. And we'll talk more about that in a couple of worksheets. But after you complete all of this information, then you would click Save Worksheet. And moving on to worksheet 6, if no questions on worksheet 5. Okay. Worksheet 6 is your project income. We want to know what approximately you think your regular fares might be for 2 years. Do you have any contracts? Maybe you have a contract with a church to provide transportation or a daycare. We want you to identify that information here and the approximate amount. If 3 lines is not enough on this worksheet, you can always add 10 rows. And then you can add 10 more rows. And when you have everything completed here, you would click Save Worksheet and move on to worksheet 7. Can we move on to worksheet 7? Seems so. Worksheet 7 is your local match source, right? You are required to have a local match to match the federal and state funds for the project. It's not 100% federally funded like it was in fiscal year 21. You have to provide a local match, and you have to identify that source of local match. Maybe it's the city, maybe it's the county, maybe it's your Medicaid trips, maybe that will be your local match, or some other human services transportation contract that you have, or maybe it's your entity. So for example, Community Action Partnership of Mid-Nebraska provides some, not all, but some of their own local match. So they would list Mid-Nebraska Community Action Partnership and then the amount of local match that they intend to provide for that 2-year period. Okay. Any questions about local match? Again, here you can add 10 rows. You have a whole lot of local match. When you have everything completed here, again, you would save the worksheet. And then there's quite a discussion this morning about local match, so you must be all straight about it. But anyway, so then you would save this worksheet and move on to the final worksheet, which is worksheet 8. So this worksheet is where we want you to sign who is authorized to sign this application. It might be the transit manager, it might be your board chair. So we want that name and the date. Okay. And then you can save the worksheet, but it's not going to let you. You get an error message here. It says, please fill all required fields. So what fields did we miss? Well, if you scroll down, you see that the checklist that in the past has been basically for your use, not mandatory fields, is now mandatory. And the reason we did that is because in the last grant period, by far and away, the reason that we had to reject your operating assistance applications is because the proper documents that are required were not uploaded. So now we want you to think about it. Did you upload it? And are you required to upload it? So you're all going to be required to have a resolution from your governing body supporting the application and committing to the local match if your organization provides any local match. Might not. Your local match might come from the city, for example. The city of Oakland provides all the local match for Oakland. But if you get local match from other sources, like the city or county or another organization, we want a documentation of commitment that that entity is indeed going to provide that local match. So some of you might not have that, but you might. So if you list on that local match page, if you list an entity other than your agency, you're going to click uploaded here because you're going to have that documentation, or NA. You're all going to have a public notice because you want to tell the public in your service area that you are applying for state and federal funds for operating assistance for transit, to provide transit services. So you will all have a copy of a public notice. You might not all have a copy of a public hearing notice and minutes, because you would only have a public hearing if you determine that there would be some significant changes in the service that you intend to provide. For example, an extensive maybe reduction in your service area or an expansion of your service area, then you would want to have a public hearing. But most of you are not going to have a public hearing. You will want a copy of this public notice and a copy of the affidavit from the newspaper for proof of publication. So you're all going to have that. You're all going to need to upload an org chart. It doesn't have to be a fancy org chart, but we want to know how transit relates, for example, to your governing body. Okay. You know whether or not you're going to have a certification of equivalent service because you already completed that on the vehicle page. Again, an indirect cost rate agreement. The vast majority of you will not have an indirect cost rate agreement. This is applicable only to a few nonprofit agencies that have a cognizant agency. So most of you are going to say, no, you don't need to upload that. Do you claim for local match in-kind services? Do you have somebody that comes and mows your property for free? And you want to use the value of those services as an in-kind match? You can do that. And you can claim that on your local match page, but then we're going to want to see documentation of the fair market value of those services. So if you have in-kind services, you're going to have to upload that documentation. Okay. Most of you aren't going to have that. You will all have Exhibit A. So Exhibit A is a document that we create. It has all of these parts to it. We provide the resources for you to complete this document, and I need to update it for fiscal year 22 and 23, and then I will post it on the nebraskatransit.com page for the 5311 resources. And this is something that you will need to complete and upload. You're going to drop all the files here. Okay. So now you've got this completed. Well, that was a glitch. It worked this morning. That's a glitch because it should not let you did not upload it. We did not upload anything into this drop files. So it should have recognized that there were no files here, and it shouldn't have let you save the worksheet, but now it won't let you go. It won't let you go to the summary page. I'm sorry. So it did let you save the worksheet, but now the error message comes in when you try to go to the summary page, and now it tells you you have to upload the files to continue.
Kari, before you move on to that, there was a question if this checklist is available for download currently anywhere, public transit website or anywhere else.
Yeah, it's on the website. That was one of the resources that was on that page, the 5311 application page. So
Okay.
they can physically download that. They don't have to wait to get to worksheet 8. So I'm going to drop in a file, and then when the file is uploaded because there's a green check mark. So the file is uploaded. And now if I went to go to the summary page, it should not let me go to the summary page, because if you see all of these worksheets with the triangle and the exclamation point, that means those worksheets are not saved. So you still can't go to the summary page. Any questions about worksheet 8?
Kari, what is that chart for the governing body? What does that mean?
It's an organizational chart. So for example, you are transit, you have X number of drivers, you have a transit manager, and you report to a governing body, or you report to the city council, who then reports to the mayor.
Okay.
Okay,
And then another thing is with our local matching, we get city and county both. They have never approved a budget for 2 years at a time. They make us come every year.
I think I've heard that before. So if that's their policy, we would accept your application with just the 1 year budget
Okay,
for
all
match
right.
from those entities. Okay, any other questions about worksheet 8? So we can't go to the summary page here, but let me go to the current year's application. And we can go to this summary page, and this is what the summary page looks like. So here's a tip on how to do your local match page, which is worksheet 7. So after you've plugged in all of your budget numbers, you can go to the summary page, and on line 14, it calculates your local match for you. So you don't have to do all the calculations as to what's 50, 25, and 25, and what's 80, 10, 10. The application does it for you. So you can come here, okay, my local match is $11,500. So now I can return to the dashboard. And let's pretend like this hasn't been submitted yet. And then you would go back to your draft application, and you could open it up, and you could go to worksheet 7, and you could make sure that all of your sources and amounts equal $11,531.
Hmm.
So that's the way to handle your local match. And now you save this worksheet
Not good.
again, if you made any changes, okay? So now you have created a draft application, draft operating assistance application, 2023 to 2025. So you don't have to do this all at once. You can work on it incrementally at your, it's due March 31st. So mark that on your calendar, but you don't have to do it. You don't have to sit down and do it all at once. You can open it up, do what you think you can accomplish, and save your work. And then you can get exit from the dashboard. Now, when you come back to the dashboard, do not click here and create another operating assistance application, because now you've created an operating assistance application for 2025 to 2027. And that's not what you want to do. You don't want to create another draft for future years. Again, you want to find your draft operating assistance application and open that. So once you submit your application, it goes first to Lucinda's dashboard. And Lucinda is going to look at your application primarily at your uploaded documents to make sure that you have everything and that you have everything signed. When she can reject it if she doesn't find everything that she needs. But if she approves it, then it will go to June's dashboard. And June will be looking primarily at your financial information. She might compare it to your previous application. Are you asking for more money, a lot less money? And if she has some questions, she might contact you, and she might reject the application. Once the application is approved through that workflow, then the agreement process starts. Okay.
Barry, we might have 2 questions, but I believe it was before we got onto application workflow.
Okay.
First one is on worksheet 7, do the sponsored rides from DHHS go there? And they added in, even though we have no idea what the total would be, people are added and deleted throughout the year.
Yes, so your Medicaid trips would go here. for local match. That's what we strongly encourage you to do, is to use that revenue from Health and Human Services Transportation as your local match. And you just do the best that you can. You could use, you know, for example, what you had in fiscal year 22 and double it for a 2-year application and just plug in that number. We know you can't be exact about ridership for Health and Human Services Transportation, but we want you to tell us that you are going to provide those trips and that you think it will help cover your local match.
Okay. And Tammy, did you want to ask your question or put it in the chat? I saw you had a question about something about 3 minutes ago. Okay. We might move on. She says it's a long question, so I think she's still typing it out.
Okay. Any other questions in the chat or any other questions from the group?
Nothing in the chat right now. Anyone's free to take themselves off mute and ask, of course.
Because that was basically the end of my presentation.
So Kara, you're saying that we can use Medicaid payments as local match?
Yes. That's what you've been doing, I'm sure.
No.
Okay. I'll have to look at how you've been reporting that. Because yes, that's local match.
Okay. Yeah, I just assumed that the only thing that I consider local match is what we get from the city and the county.
No,
Okay.
we have agencies that get 100% of their local match from Medicaid trips.
Okay. So if we can make our required local match amount from just our Medicaid, are we still required to have to go to the city or the county?
No. No, you do
Okay.
not.
Okay. Yeah, but it's kind of hard to figure what we would probably make in a 2-year basis, because it's, you know, we stay pretty busy Medicaid wise. So I don't know.
Well, you could continue to ask for the local match, and then if you don't need it, you could ask for it for the application, and then if you don't need it every month, then don't ask for it. Just tell the city and the county that you have covered the local match that month with your Medicaid trips.
Oh, okay. Because I just bill them once every month, and then they, you know, I don't get a lump sum check. I get paid every month from both the city and the county. Okay.
Okay,
All right. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Kari, regarding proof of the local match entities, do they need them for all 3 Medicaid providers or Medicaid entities?
No, actually, we have not asked for proof of local match from Medicaid providers, because that's more of a contract, really. But it's a contract that you can use the revenue as local match. So we don't need anything for that. It would just be if it was an entity outside, like, for example, Nance Trans asks for local match from the county and the city. So we would want to see some kind of document, a resolution, or some kind of a meeting minutes that approves that local match.
So then continuing that, you mentioned contract. Do we send the signed contract for the current fiscal? I assume that's current fiscal year.
Current contract for what? Are we still on Medicaid?
Medicaid, still on Medicaid with Medicaid providers entities.
You could send it, but we don't require it as proof of local match. You could just list it as a local match source.
Okay. And then I assume that would mean that they could send it, but they don't have to resubmit for future fiscal years.
Resubmit for future. No,
They wouldn't have to resubmit if they could send the Medicaid contract, then they could resubmit it for future fiscal years, but it's up to them if they're sending that or not. Is that?
it is. So what we use as proof that you have that local match is when you submit your monthly invoice and you have that documentation that they have paid you.
And then final question regarding the Medicaid entities here. You mentioned you know, earlier in your answer, you said something and about depends on who it is, who you're working with. What would you say about including DHHS contracts or agreements?
DHHS is could be used as local match because it's human services transportation. Title 20 is another example. Head Start is another example of human service. You might have a contract with the Head Start agency in your area to provide transportation for those children.
Okay. And then I believe you mentioned something about agencies might need to provide proof that they've been paid. Am I remembering that right?
Yes, that's what we require. We require monthly on your monthly invoices that we want to see the documentation that what you're reporting from Motive Care, for example, you actually received.
Okay, so it's showing that you've received the funding that's been promised or agreed to.
That you have reported on that monthly invoice.
That you reported. Okay, thank you. Sounds like we're good now.
So if you get $10,000 in a month for your rides, then we would want some document to back that up.
Beg pardon if anyone got that very loud buzzer through my microphone.
Anybody else have any questions? This is a much quieter group.
It is.
Must be after lunch kind of a thing.
You mentioned that earlier and I was like, yeah, it's that after lunch haze everybody's reached. We do have one other one. What if we're projecting growth for their I assume this is regarding having to do a 2-year thing. What about how should they handle that?
Project as best you can and ask for what you need. I know there are some areas that are growing exponentially and, it is difficult to know, you might have a new contract tomorrow for service. We know you can't project 100%, but do the best that you can. And, again, ask for what you think you need. Now, if you run out of money, we have always been able to do supplemental agreements. Halfway through the grant cycle or closer to the end of the grant cycle, if you start to run out of money, we have in the past been able to do supplemental agreements, and I don't foresee that that's going to change. So.
Okay, following up on that, for the Medicaid aspect, again, I think we're about showing proof of payments. We can't supply proof of what we are asking for if we're projecting growth. So I believe that this question is going to the idea of if we're projecting growth, our past statements won't show that projection. So is that going to be required?
Well, no, we're not. We don't. If you project growth and that is reflected in your budget, we're not going to ask unless you're going from $100,000 to $2 million. We wouldn't question you're asking for increased funding. And we don't ask for documentation as to what you have based that on. Again, unless it's just an extraordinary amount. We just assume that you've done your due diligence and done the best you can to project what you think your costs are going to be, what you think you're going to have to pay drivers in order to attract drivers. So just do the best you can.
All right. Would you please repeat where the Kelly Blue Book guidance on rating vehicles was going to be placed?
On the funding application resource page that I went to earlier, go to our nebraskatransit.com, click on funding and applications, and then click on current subrecipients, and I'll put it here.
All right. Again, I'm just gonna put out a call. If you do have any further questions, please make sure, take yourself off mute, put them in the chat. We do have some time still here, so don't feel shy if you want to know something.
We got way off topic this morning, so
We got some interesting ones. That's gonna be a fun recording to share out.
yeah.
Another question. To confirm, on worksheet 7, local match includes city/county and DHHS/Medicaid, but only city/county needs the documentation for the operating agreement.
Correct. Or if you have a commitment from a local business or Walmart, we would want to see that commitment. Or the local hospital. Anybody?
Not seeing anything.
No.
Carrie, it's Lois.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question on, you said the hospital. Okay, I actually get, my hospital pays for all the trips to the hospital, physical therapy, Tecumseh Family Health, which is the doctor's office, and home health. And I send them a bill every month, and then they send me a check every month. Now, would that go on 7, since that would be, well, that's a sponsored ride, so I'm not sure where I would put that one.
So you could, just like with any of these other trips, Medicaid trips, or the payment,
So like
if you have a
DHHS,
contract with the
I can also-
hospital, you could, we would recommend that you put that on the local match worksheet to provide you with the local match, so that the city and the county don't have to. Or you could,
See, that's something that varies every month, because, okay, one month I'll have 200 because I'll have so many going to physical therapy, but then the next month I'm dropped to 50. It jumps around so much that it was just easier, instead of them giving, helping with the match, that they just decided to cover that for the patients that went there. So
I would put that on the local match page. But
But
let
this
me
can-
be clear, and this came
Yes.
up this morning too. All of these rides, Medicaid rides, if the hospital's paying for trips, those are all sponsored boardings and should be reported as such.
I do that.
Okay.
The DHHS.
Mhm. So you can report that the dollars that you receive from that contract, or for providing that service,
Yeah,
on
because it's
the
not a
local match
contract, it's
page,
just,
but it's all sponsored passenger boardings.
and that goes on the local match. So,
Correct.
okay, got it. Thank you.
One more question, Carrie. Do school contracts or can school contracts go on worksheet 7? Again, I think local match is what we're talking about.
See, school contracts is not a human services transportation. So that should go on the fair revenue page. If you have a contract with a church or a school that isn't specifically for human services transportation.
Question is, do I count it as a sponsored ride or cash ride? It is a billed ride, or it is billed, I should say.
If another entity pays for that fare for that passenger, it is a sponsored passenger boarding, and you were to report it as such. If the passenger pays their own fare, it's a regular board. It's a regular boarding and it's a regular fare.
All right.
Anybody?
I'm not seeing anything. I will say, Carrie, I appreciate it because I've learned a lot today just asking you these questions. Please don't think that means that I'm ready to go help somebody fill this out, but it has been informative, I think.
So if you have, as you go through this process, if you have questions, Lucinda and I would be probably your best contact. If you have questions as you complete the application, do remember that it is due March 31st. And that the next grant cycle will begin July 1st, 2023. Is that it?
I don't have anything else. Oh, yep, nope, we're good.
We're good?
Yep.
Okay.
Got to thank you in the chat real quick, and I was like,
Oh,
oh,
okay.
no.
Okay. Good. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us here today. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out.
Thank you all. And just again, we'll try and have this video out, the links to the videos out to you sometime this week, hopefully soon. But otherwise, I think you're free to go about the rest of your Wednesday. We appreciate you taking time to listen to us and ask us questions.